Extracting value while claiming to create it. When the vendor's social capital outpaces the consumer's. Hi, my name is Sarah Trimble. I'm the founder and CEO of the Job Applicant Perspective, the first anonymous user reviews for job ads across the U.S., and the future of HR tech. I'm running a paradigm shift, which is kind of a big deal. And so I put this Substack out in video and audio format, as well as it comes from my written work. The way I look at it, you have to demonstrate what scurvy is en masse to folks in order to suggest that they should start giving each other vitamin C, So anyway, economic scurvy as an information asymmetry, right? All right. Let's get started from the beginning. Bold supposition. The online hiring industry may be one of the clearest empirical demonstrations that social capital shapes economic markets. First principles truth as I observe it. Economic markets are problem-solving social systems. They generate value by resolving real-world constraints. A bridge is not valuable because wood and steel are scarce. It's valuable because a river stands between you and where you need to go. The bridge solves the constraint. Scarcity, the amount of time, money, labor, or material available, shapes how we respond to that constraint. It does not solve it. Electricity was not a more efficient allocation of candles and wax. Vaccination was not a more efficient allocation of disease. They created value by solving constraints that previously limited what human beings could do. Constraint is the creation opportunity. Scarcity is just the pressure we respond to under it. Old school wisdom understood this perfectly. Necessity is the mother of invention. Necessity emerges from constraint plus a scarcity of adequate alternatives. Human creativity imagines a new solution, and human labor makes that solution real. But adaptation isn't guaranteed. Scarcity can just as easily produce conformity, rationing, hoarding, exclusion, or submission. Can't imagine why I would mention any of those in 2026, totally out of nowhere. Now, legit though, that's the tell. Scarcity itself creates nothing. Applied to a market, it doesn't generate value, it generates leverage. It is a tool of behavioral control, and control is where extraction lives. That distinction gives us a useful question for virtual markets built to coordinate human beings. Is the market creating value by solving the constraint between its stakeholders, or creating control by managing their access to one another? Does the vendor bring value? A vendor can be valuable in a variety of ways in a marketplace, but is the vendor valuable because they're bringing value to the stakeholders or because they're extracting it from the stakeholders? That question matters because social capital determines when we mistake control for the creation of value. Who this is for economists and market designers, a first principles distinction between value creation and economic control, and a case study in what happens when scarcity is mistaken for evidence of value. For economic sociologists, an examination of how social capital determines, whose costs a market recognizes, whose information it values, and ultimately whose behavior economic systems are organized around. For HR professionals and talent industry leaders, a structural question about online hiring: are our technologies reducing the underlying coordination constraint or becoming more efficient at controlling access around it? For job seekers and workforce advocates, a framework for understanding why your economic importance to a market does not necessarily translate into voice, influence, or market power. What is social capital? So, again, I really do like Daniela Mestenak-Young. And I want to be really clear. I think I'm a structural systems thinker and a dive bar economist. So I'm coming into the field of sociology from the outside, from systems thinking, which is very interconnected. But I will inevitably, I run more like the organic scholar. That's the way I've heard it described in sociology, more like that style, first principles thinker. So keep that in your brain when I'm saying this and understand. And I think it's okay. You should meld languages. You should meld ideas. It's a good idea to meld ideas. I like patterns, Anyway, but point is, I'm going to say some things and I want to make sure we're grounding in context because I want it to be true things, a devoted person around reality. I really like observing reality. So I am informed by Pierre Bourdieu, who wrote The Forms of Capital in 1986. Put a citation there. But I pull directly from my background in linguistics to establish my framework. Yeah, I think everybody pulls from their own perspective. My background is in linguistics. Linguistics for me was brilliant. I was like, oh, I finally get it. Information. I like the way information travels, Language is a type of verbal protocol, information transfer, but humans aren't just a mind. Social capital is the degree to which an individual's internal state carries enough social weight to function as information that constrains the behavior of the surrounding social system. I think of social capital like social protocol for the human computer system of society. Every node has a nervous system. Every interaction creates some degree of somatic cost to the body. So I spoke about it in a previous blog. I think of social capital as like two reoccurring feedback loops. It's when you walk into a room, can your somatic system read the room? Like the room is a social sentence. The room is a sentence. The social context is a sentence. And can your nervous system read the room? And can the room read your nervous system? That's what I'm about to talk about too, because both of those two things feed each other. The kid in the farm kid in the black tie event versus the farm kid in the 4-H event. Two things are happening there. One, the kid is reading the room. The farm kid in the black tie event can't read the room as well as he can at the 4-H event. Number two, the room can read him better too. And that's also part of it. So every interaction creates some degree of somatic cost to the body. Interactional costs vary based on whether you find ballet, accounting, or jazz taxing. Does Michael Phelps, who likes athletics, enjoy tennis more than swimming or swimming more than tennis? Where can he read the room and where can the room read him really well? That's the framework I use. It depends on your experience, your nature, and the context, but those costs are not weighted equally by the larger system. If a CEO, becomes overwhelmed by a process, people reorganize, meetings move, assistants intervene, consultants are hired, technology is purchased. The CEO's discomfort becomes information about something the surrounding environment may need to change. If a minimum wage worker becomes overwhelmed by a process, the response may be very different. Their discomfort is more likely to become information about them. They need to adapt, work faster, regulate themselves, or tolerate the conditions. Both people have nervous systems that could be equally dysregulated. The difference is how much their nervous system costs constrain everyone else's behavior. I feel like it's a way to describe hierarchy, where your nervous system gets to constrain the room's behavior, but the room's nervous system doesn't get to constrain yours, I'm very interested in cult-like dynamics and hierarchy in this 2026 era of the world, for obvious reasons. This matters economically because the experiences we take seriously become the problems we try to solve. Problems we recognize attract attention. Attention attracts creativity, labor, investment, and eventually products and markets. Yeah. The experiences we do not socially value can remain economically invisible even when the costs themselves are very real. Very real. Whose nervous system are we organized to protect? That question may tell us considerably more about where economic innovation goes than we generally acknowledge. What constraint is hiring supposed to solve? Before we ask whether the online hiring market creates value, we need to identify the constraint it exists to solve. Employers need labor. They can do whatever it is their business is set up to do. Workers need employment to help find access to food, shelter, and healthcare. In many ways, the job market is the farmer's fields of the modern era. The difficulty is getting the right information to the right people at the right time so they can identify a workable match. That is a coordination constraint. A functioning hiring market therefore creates value by making that coordination easier and more efficient, helping employers and job seekers find one another, understand what the other's offering, evaluate whether a match makes sense, and reach an outcome efficiently. This makes hiring a fundamentally bilateral market. Both stakeholders enter with constraints. The employer lacks needed labor. The job seeker lacks needed employment. Neither participant is the problem being solved. Neither participant is the problem being solved. The difficulty of coordinating between them is the problem. This is a market of perishable goods, talent, and labor. Are we making it in a market of perishable goods? If there's no opt-out and no consumer memory, you cannot sell exclusivity ever. You can't. But they do not enter that market with equal social capital. Employment itself carries social standing. The employer's unmet needs can therefore be recognized as a market problem requiring innovation, while the unemployed person's unmet need is more easily treated as an individual problem requiring adaptation. That distinction changes the economic question. Instead of asking, how do we reduce the coordination constraint between these two stakeholders, the market can begin asking, how do we efficiently control access to the socially valuable economic identity? The employer, don't get me wrong. I think the market isn't concerned about reducing coordination constraints. It's concerned with efficiently controlling access to the socially valuable economic identity. Employers are purchasing exclusivity. They're purchasing distance from job seekers. They're purchasing market failure, injecting coordination failure. But vendors aren't selling coordination failure to their mind. I think they're selling access to the desired identity, the Veblen good of an identity. The commodity is employment that they sell. The commodity is exclusivity. The ego preservation is what they sell. The first is a problem of value creation. The second is a problem of scarcity and allocation. It's about economic control. Technology can become extraordinarily efficient at the second without ever solving the first. What did the market actually build? Online talent platforms claim to connect job seekers and employers, but they are built entirely opposed to market coordination. Legit. They took a two-sided market, collapsed half of the side by stripping it of economic governance and social governance, so there's no reputation or discipline, and then they just let it run free. As if they don't know that what people are going to do. Obviously. They are entirely opposed to it. Across ATS platforms, job boards, and staffing agencies, the design prioritizes the exact opposite of market coordination. Online hiring prioritizes the perception of coordination solutions and the reality of offloading the somatic load of the market's function onto the consumer who can't opt out and is not allowed consumer memory. It is profit via ease because profit via discipline was not required. Employers have never once funded a market that they rely on that is required to act with disciplines, not once. They funded a market without discipline as if that was a rational business decision. It is profit via ease. Profit via the pain isn't profit via the malice, it's profit via the ease. When character assassinating the workforce was cheaper and quicker than fixing their user experience, social devaluation won. I would argue this pattern in human social systems works at all levels, from one-to-one friendships or romance to family systems to economic systems. The concept of scapegoating is saying the same thing. social capital subsidizing coordination failures. What do they say in The Wizard of Oz? One way to bring folks together is to give them a really good enemy, right? Social capital subsidizing coordination failure, scapegoating. Consider the ATS industry. Online hiring's original sin. The ATS industry never exists in any other two-sided market, not even once. It's the definition of market failure. The whole thing is they don't, like the thing with Workday versus Mobley, they don't need to prove the discrimination exists. They need to prove that Workday shouldn't exist, and they shouldn't. There's no version of reality in a coordination market that an applicant tracking system curating 95% of the customers away from the suppliers that paid to meet them ever exists. In a market perishable goods, not once. Workday, the problem isn't that Workday discriminated. The problem is that Workday exists at all. Their existence is a discrimination. Algorithms, like curation, is bias. That's what it is. By definition, it's discrimination. The existence is. It's hilarious. Like trying to prove they're like I don't have a good example on me, but it's just amusing that they're worried about their algorithm when their existence is the problem, because they're in a category or they don't realize that the problem isn't their algorithm. For job seekers, the primary consumers of job ad inventory, vendors in a job market display job ad inventory, employment opportunities, and the people coming to the market to acquire the goods and services on display. That system is designed to extract value while systematically denying 95% of applicants access to employment at scale. Online hiring is an economic grocery store that profits via denying people access to the food. Like, we're going to starve everyone this way. That's how you starve everyone. The opacity of the applicant tracking system, though, doesn't just confuse users. It communicates that they were not worth consideration at all without ever having to acknowledge that judgment. Job seekers are the unpaid workforce producing all of the exclusivity employers purchase in a market they cannot opt out of, often without knowing what an applicant tracking system is, because the system itself is invisible on job postings. Like, breathtaking error. They didn't purchase hiring solutions. They purchased hiring failure. Like, because it's ego preservation to me. Identity. They're purchasing their identity because their identity relies on not identifying with those people, on being afraid of those people. And that is like what they're selling the whole time is madness, like economic madness. The employer pays to inject a coordination failure into the market. For the employer supplying the job ad inventory, who also pays its bills, the applicant tracking system vendor markets efficiency but delivers exclusivity, which is simply inefficiency rebranded. Exclusivity is inefficiency with better PR. The employer pays to inject the coordination failure into the market. By optimizing for curation instead of clarification, ATS curates. It doesn't clarify, it curates. It obfuscates, not clarifies. It's the definition of a market failure. Employers force job seekers to optimize for visibility, mass applying, which floods employers with volume and forces them to double down on curation. This creates a non-converging equilibrium. It is mathematically impossible for this loop to generate economic coordination and value. And it doesn't just hurt the people who created it, it hurts the entire economy because it sprays applications everywhere. I have gone through all the SEC filings of the previous companies. You can look at them: Taleo, Workday, SuccessFactors, Indeed, and ZipRecruiter, and the way it impacts Kelly Services too as well. It's terrible. Kelly Services is inside their ecosystem, at least. It doesn't spray everywhere, but it definitely negatively impacts candidate. And all the other ones, it impacts the entire economy. It pollutes the entire economy with noise. That's what a noise polluter, noise creator. As an engine for reinforcing a social narrative at the expense of potentially trillions in economic value over the last 2 decades globally, you can see falsifiable calculation models in previous blog posts. The architecture is remarkably effective. And I will do my best to link that also, so that I'm not just saying words, trillions. Yeah, that's a great big word, you know? But I did actually do the calculations. Obviously, it's a magnitude. I imagine the fancy people can do another run at some of that stuff and test it for themselves. The architecture is remarkably effective if you're talking about reinforcing a social narrative, but the architecture is remarkably effective. ATS vendors operate through a form of economic Munchausen by proxy, you know, justifying their ongoing existence by profiting off the application spam they engineered, while pointing to a frazzled candidates as proof that aggressive curation was necessary all along. As long as you assume the worst of the people out there, then everything that you do to cause harm to them because they're the worst makes it look like you're justified in the harm that you yourself caused. Like, and that, like, the harm you cause them is the economy you sell goods and services into. Job seekers are the consumers. When you profit via failing them, you fail the economy you rely on. Job boards, a textbook lemon market. Job boards promise access to employment, but their own disclosures reveal system optimized for disconnection. They aren't even hiding it. Abysmal conversion. Indeed's reported data implies a conversion rate of near 0.3% since 2023. This is why I think they're selling preferentially, they're selling exclusivity. They're so successful because of the exclusivity they have. That's why they put it in their fiscal year report. And what that actually is like, you're selling evidence of your market failure as your value add. Like, the exclusivity, they think it's a win, the exclusivity that they created. And it's actually evidence of the market failure that they facilitated and filed, like, receipts of having done. Like, you're making it so easy for the class action lawyers. They don't even have to look. Like, reports place near than 27 to 33% of market inventory as ghosts. Close to 1 in 3 employers admitting to posting roles they don't intend to fill, according to Clarified Capital and LinkedIn Ghost Jobs analysis. Staffing and recruiting, the perception of care, the reality of harm. Legacy platforms promise the human touch and personal care rather than automated algorithmic engines. In reality, they function the same. Candidates are treated as uncompensated inventory, their words, not mine, rather than market participants bearing the cost of a search they cannot see through. Why doesn't the market correct it? The 4 engines of market lock-in. First, zero consumer leverage. Workers cannot vote with their feet or exit the platform because selling labor is tied to baseline survival. Vendors can degrade user experience and process quality endlessly without losing candidate inventory. Somatic value transfer. Process costs are fully externalized onto applicants, bearing 1,000% of the manual entry. I've said it before. Applicant tracking systems didn't even remotely make anything more efficient. It made it more exclusive. It offloaded, so what it actually did was increase employers' tolerance for engagement by offloading the responsibility for the failure onto the applicants that it profited from excluding. Like, it doesn't make more efficiency. It makes the opposite of efficiency. It's exclusivity. That's all it is. Distance from the solution is what they purchased. Employers feel efficient because candidate labor is uncompensated, $0 an hour uncompensated labor. By decoupling, by choosing to fail, like collapse the market, decoupling job listings from application costs, the job market enforces an implicit $0 an hour minimum wage on the global labor force. I cannot tell you how embarrassed I am that anybody said Calder Hicks efficiency. How to tell me you dropped the floor out of the labor market. Why would you do that? The lack of self-reflection involved is wild. Like, everybody's at $0 an hour minimum wage. This is a global marketplace profiting from denying people access to employment as long as possible. Like, profiting the longer they can keep their magic claw machine going, the unpaid labor. Employers bear no marginal cost for requiring custom essays, video submissions, or manual port reentry. When candidate time is free to consume, employer demand for candidate time becomes infinite. Of course it does. It's the Jevons paradox. Candidate time is free. Employers are just going to waste it. That's what people do. There's no constraints. Whenever you don't have a market with constraints, you're extracting value. Employers, it's lack of discipline to me. Lack of constraints is lack of discipline. Employers, it's not exactly, okay. Anyway, employers get to profit from decreased wages while getting to offload responsibility for its creation via the market they didn't realize was creating it. They purposefully looked away from noticing the market that they controlled everything in. It's a Sultan Agrabah, except instead of the Sultan having guards around the marketplace, the vendors just decided to ransack the people, and the Sultan enforced people to go into the marketplace while the vendors ransacked them. Institutional capture and enforced silence. The failure of political, academic, and union leadership to intervene comes down to refusal to ask, cui bono? Who benefits? Come on. It's the most basic thing ever. Slow hiring isn't a mysterious market failure. It is mathematically obvious and publicly engineered by exclusion-oriented tech stacks who openly marketed exactly what they're doing and filed records of it everywhere. The architecture is protected by explicit social threat. Candidates who publicly critique broken hiring pipelines risk professional blacklisting, insulating ventures from public scrutiny. Don't talk about your hiring process. It makes you look unprofessional. In the 90s, when we had a functioning labor market, a two-sided matching market is one thing. When we have a one-sided supply chain where they collapse half the market and profit the excluding people from employment, it's just a protection racket. That's all it is, a protection racket. Protection racket language. It's just criminal extortion kind of stuff. Check the research also. It's game theory giveaway. I can't believe they said that stuff out loud. That's embarrassing. You can admit it if you want to, people can just use their records in court. How long has LinkedIn been running a gigantic economic scam? Look how long recruiters have been openly threatening the workforce across LinkedIn publicly, and employers have been endorsing it. Threatening everybody's access to food, clothing, shelter, and healthcare, and their children. And employers yeah, that tracks. That's what a vendor that's trying to solve my problems does. Yeah? It's weird. The job applicant perspective pulls from the nature of human systems and human history. We ask simply, what if all of our economic markets ran on discipline and market legibility? What could happen? Why is it so important to create engagement via desperation? Genuinely, market delay is market decay every time. Them trying to do desperation is them trying to injure the talent that they claim to want to connect you with. What if we just did online engagement via community? People talk about orcs and elves all the time online. Why wouldn't they come to the market and generate tons of engagement about this? They would. The problem is if they did, the social hierarchy about and around employment, we'd have a whole society where we cared about each other, whether or not we had a job. Can you imagine? That might be awesome for people who really like control. Why is the coordination market very obviously and only obviously organized around protecting the exclusivity, the social capital of its suppliers and vendors as superior, the exclusivity from the consumers they require for all of their profits? We don't ask employers to change. We know the market has behaviorally conditioned them to be unable to learn. I genuinely think that's what hierarchy does. Social hierarchy creates a dynamic where the people in charge are idiots. Not idiots. They're in operational closure. I'm sorry, I'm being too fun. People get behaviorally conditioned not to learn, is what happens. Behaviorally conditioned to be taken care of, almost like behaviorally conditioned into toddlers. They're actually stronger, smarter, and more capable. I was inside the operational enclosure before too. I was waiting for someone to save me, to protect me, to get it out, to solve it. At a certain point, you change or you don't, but when you're protected, you don't tend to as much. We don't ask vendors to change. We know they can't admit to what they've done because to do so would be to expose their business model. We simply take advantage of the two truths the online job market has drilled into the job-seeking workforce for the past 2 decades. Number one, no one in the professional work world, in journalism, public policy, economic institutes, or labor unions will speak out for you go to bat for you or protect you from the harm they created, they overlooked, they benefited from, and they actively endorse at times. They will not admit what they did wrong. They will not blame the people who caused the harm or who are continuing to. They just don't do it. The leadership has no leadership. You are utterly alone. To ask for help is to be harmed further by the invalidation they will deal out or the veiled threats and criminal extortion threats. Don't talk about your hiring process. It's not good advice. It's just a complicitness, bowing down to letting people harm you. The situation is just, it's just people without, you have to have a spine. Like, you just took people's spines. The situation is progressively deteriorating. You and your children's ability to eat is on the table. Adapt, be creative, get clever. A Jevons paradox on either end of the market. Akerloff's market for lemons running unabashedly for 2 decades with employers openly funding it, even if they didn't know, over the last decade. Like, economic insanity, like religion here. It's wild. Like, it's a doom loop, it's a vicious cycle, a Jevons paradox, and Akerloff's market for lemons. Jevons paradox in either end of the market, too. Depending, is it like a Jevons and a half or what? It's hard to say what you want to call it. But as I said, also, scarcity motivates behavior, but constraints create opportunities to make something new. The threat is the opportunity. SWOT. We aren't here to abandon economic principles. We're here to demonstrate them. I'm going to say it's also like a breathtaking opportunity. It's breathtaking harm and a breathtaking opportunity at the same time. I'm horribly matriarchal. I love myself a good system. And I hate seeing a decoupled system. So I'm taking advantage. You cannot control the constraints you're in. You cannot control the scarcity you have in front of you sometimes, but you can control what you choose to do. Something new to solve something that wasn't solved before. This economic market, this job market needs consumer memory. A pattern you can map is a pattern you can adapt to, and a pattern you can adapt to is a pattern that will adapt. Necessity is, as ever, a ferocious mother. Conclusion: social capital determines what part of a financial system we economically value, but not what part is crucial to a functioning economic system. And this formulation of economics suggests unequivocally what we already know to be true, that a market without constraints isn't creating value. It is quite simply undisciplined. It's weaponizing economic scarcity for social and economic control via behavioral control. The job applicant perspective isn't asking anyone to be nice. It's not about allowing it's about not allowing economic inventory in a virtual marketplace to remain unknown. Thanks. That's it. I know I'm polemical and passionate, but I also think at a certain point when you're neutral is just suggesting the reference frame that currently exists is a good norm, which obviously not, like, so I know it's jarring, but that's where my brain goes. Anyway, be sane out there. Stay kind to each other. The world needs more kind people. Generally, I think the internet made the world into a snowstorm, So we have to learn to trust the people on the road again. So thanks. Have a good one.